Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird, true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Case file number 443, written by Beeatriste. The secrets of a woman aging 28 years in the blink of an eye. One day at the beginning of this year, me, 26 female, and my boyfriend, 26 male, went for a big walk around the town we were living in at the time. It was the middle of the day, probably around 2 p.m., and we were both completely sober. At one point, we were on the side of the road, on one of those lanes where people run and walk. Apologies, I don't know the proper name for those. And we saw a female child, around 12 years old if I had to guess, jogging. She was in our lane, coming our way. I remember finding it strange for a child to be jogging on her own. There was no one else around, and it was a pretty remote area, like a countryside road. But I didn't mention anything to my boyfriend. We were walking side by side, so I walked behind him so she could pass. I stopped seeing her for a few seconds, and when I saw her again next to me, she was a fully grown woman in her mid-40s. He immediately looks at me in shock and asks, "Did you see that?" I asked him if he had also seen a child turn into a woman, and he said yes. He said she never really left his sight, but as he blinked and looked again, she was no longer a child. We even looked back to confirm, and she was still the mid-40s woman. Since then, I've been noticing other smaller glitches. I don't know if they were always there, and I just didn't pay attention, or if that started a whole chain of events. Case file number 444, written by Friendly Demonic. The secrets of my son's soul. The first time this happened was when he was 3. My older sister was staying in my apartment and watching TV in her room when my son walked in. She asked him if he wanted to watch cartoons and put some on for him. He just sat quietly at the end of her bed while she tried to get his attention. Then she hears him laugh in the other room with me. When she looked at the bedroom door, the copy of my son disappeared. When she told me this, I assumed she was high and imagined it. Second time, a friend visiting from the UK got up at night to use the restroom and saw my son's door was wide open, lights on, and he was sitting at his little table with a friend. He told me about this in the morning, since it was 3 a.m. and kinda weird. My son wasn't in his room that night, and no other children were present. I rationalized it as he was tired and imagined it. Third time was when my son was around 8. My best friend and roommate, new apartment, different state, got up to go to the bathroom. The hall light was off and it was dark, but she saw my son standing in the hall next to her. She told him to go back to bed and stepped into the bathroom. She then sees him in the mirror, standing behind her, and tells him to stop and to go to bed. My son then turns around and walks away. That's when she realized something was wrong and looked back into the hall, but he wasn't there. She went to his room and he was still asleep. She ran to my room to tell me, and for the first time I thought, okay, there seems to be a pattern here. Maybe there is something going on. The last time was when my son was 15. This time I saw it. I was in bed, depressed and tired after having had a miscarriage. I woke up to my son curled up in bed next to me. I thought he was trying to comfort me, which was sweet. I sang a lullaby to him and petted his hair before it clicked. My son is 15 now. This was him at age 7 or 8. I froze and asked who he was. He told me everything was going to be okay, then got up and left. Everyone assumed it was blood loss that made me hallucinate, but I was wide awake. No one has seen my son's double in 5 years, but it's weird as hell. Case notes, file number 443. First off, I'm terribly sorry for your miscarriage. I couldn't even imagine the sorrow that would bring. But at least you do have a son who's already a teenager. I also can't imagine how that would feel, but of course in a positive way. So I've been looking into astral projection more since so many glitches seem to involve it these days. It seems to be accelerating in frequency. One key point, however, is that it's typically described as being a voluntary process, a conscious process. But in most of the glitches I've read, it's accidental, often with the originating person not even being aware they did it. This makes me wonder if there's some environmental trigger that can activate the latent ability in people. Clearly it doesn't happen to everyone in the area, and it's very infrequent even for those it does happen to. if I had to guess a trigger, it'd be some sort of frequency in the vicinity of the original person, which triggers their brain to activate the ability they may not even be aware they have. Perhaps this frequency could even be imagined by the host, for instance while dreaming. That could explain why it often happens when they're sleeping. Bonus file, written by niceblokekev. The Secrets of a Great Landlord. The second flat I ever rented was in Camberwell, London. It's a low-rise block, probably 1960s, and I was renting, living there on my own. Now, a few things happened during the first few months of my stay. I'd come home from work and a few kitchen unit cupboards would be open. No biggie. Can I be sure I close all the cupboards at 7:30 a.m. this morning after I rushed for breakfast? Not really. This happened more than a few times. Then I came home to my breakfast bowl smashed in the middle of the kitchen floor. Pretty sure I left it on the side where it wouldn't fall off, but again, it fell off, so maybe I didn't. Turning point for me was one night, whilst fast asleep, my bedroom door slammed shut very loudly. Now, I always sleep with my door an inch or two open, and I know doors can close on their own, but this must have had some good force behind it. Anyway, I decided to put my four-legged chair up against the handle of my bedroom door. It wouldn't have worked if you were to move the handle as the chair wasn't high enough, but it made me feel better. I woke up minutes before my alarm usually to find the chair facing the opposite way around, the back facing away from the door. Now maybe I did some sleepwalking, maybe I did, but that was enough for me. I packed a bag, grabbed my wallet and keys, and while still in my dressing gown, drove to my parents'. I informed my landlord that I was moving out immediately. Keep the deposit, I'm out. I think the place is haunted and I'm a wimp to that sort of thing. He laughed. Funny enough, he said, you're not the first person to say that. I'll give you your deposit back. Case notes, bonus file. Right, not much to say here, another haunted house, which is creepy in and of itself. But what's really weird is that your landlord was so damn cool. I think that's the real mystery here. How the hell did you find such a good landlord? Let us know. Oh, and also, that you got out immediately. Smart move. Case file number 445, written by Doctors 12345. The chilling secrets of a sound only I can hear. So, earlier this year, my family and I went to my mom's hometown for a holiday. We live in a different country now, and it's a really nice getaway. When something strange started happening. We stayed at the house my mom grew up in, which has quite a big front garden and a massive back garden, like most people in that area do. When you go to the back garden, you have the neighbors' gardens on the left and right, and at the back, there's an area which, if I understood correctly, people share and use for their cows and horses. Behind this shared area, there's a massive forest. Opposite the front of the house, there's a road, which is just outside the house, and on the other side of the road, there's lots of hills, with many private areas which are mainly used for animals and living. Anyway, we were there for just over 2 weeks, most of which we spent at the house due to the isolation rules. We mainly spent this time outside, either playing or cleaning the garden, cutting the grass, chopping down the old tree branches, etc. Every now and then I would hear this really weird noise. The best way I can describe it is a human laugh mixed with a dog's or wolf's howl. It would last for 2 to 3 seconds before stopping. Sometimes it would be about 5 of these laughs in a row. Sometimes it was only 1. To make it even weirder, it was quite loud, but it sounded like it was coming from far away. However, everything echoed if it was loud. Everything from a person shouting to an ambulance's sirens and train siren, is that how you call it, would echo. So the sound had to be coming from nearby, and yet it sounded like it came from so far away. The thing is, it looked like I was the only one reacting to the sound in any way for the first couple of days. So I asked my mom if she heard the sound too, and she said she didn't, but it was probably some sort of animal. So I kept an eye out over the next few days to see if I could spot it. However, all I could see was cows, horses, sheep, goats, chickens, and pigs, none of which could make that sound. The sound kept happening very randomly and irregularly over the duration of our stay, and for a long time it seemed like I was the only one hearing it, until I realized my brother was reacting to it as well. I asked him what he was reacting to, and he described the same sound I was hearing. Okay, now the light. The toilet is actually outside, even though we are currently renovating the house and started building a toilet inside, and I needed to go one night, so I grabbed a torch and out I went. As I look up at the sky, I see this light, the size of a big star, but it was L-shaped. I thought I was half asleep, so I ignored it. So I went to the toilet, did my business, then started walking back towards the house. I stopped to look back at the place where the star was, and now it looked like a square U, sort of like an L and an inverted L right next to it. As I was wondering what it could be, I heard the laughter again. I pointed the torch towards where I thought it came from, but then it started coming from all around me. Call me what you want, but I got so scared I just sprinted to the house. But yeah, this is it. What the hell was that?